spider. Oh, the lines draw themselves across the setting, sun drawn on the weaver's web. The strength of our eye to resurrect my destiny. Go the line. Through the window, wind it blew the curtain from the rod. The candles flickered shadows on the wall. As she cut the deck of cards, I cut my ties to the world. Now I'm falling from the tree. Oh, the lines draw themselves across the setting, sun drawn on the weaver's web. Strength of our eyes to resurrect my destiny. Go the lines. And I'm not a fortune teller. I put one foot before the other. I'm not a fortune teller. I pick my cues up from the weather. Time is a foolish alibi to hide behind. It always comes back to you. So the lines draw themselves across the setting, sun drawn on the weaver's web. Strength of eye to resurrect my destiny. Go, go, go the line.
Ready?
Yes.
We're here down at the river edge, or the edge of the river, I guess is a better way to put it. So we're here at the edge of the river, watching the helicopter seeds float by, and we've managed to move just far enough up that I think that, is that a duck or a goose? But it's not going to interfere, I think, with the interview.
That's a goose.
Okay. I found some reeds to throw into the water too, so I'll be doing that periodically. You'll hear this noise. But here I'm here with Jaems Murphy, and we're down at the river, and we're just going to have a little discussion about music. And I'm trying to remember the structure of the interviews that we've done before. Since none of them were done on location, I want to ask, what makes you want to come to the river to discuss?
When I was living in Milwaukee, it was a very peaceful place. You have a lot of activity going around, even in your home. There are times in River West where your neighborhood can be quiet, but it's a nice way to get away from like people, civilization energy, and kind of just be around like calm, soothing, and enriching environments.
Mm-hmm. You don't live in Milwaukee in the center anymore. You live a little bit outside of town, in a more rural area. Do you find that influences your writing and your songwriting?
I see it will be. Mm-hmm. Right now, it's more influences my like interface with reality, I guess, with existence, with my life. It changed. So in that way, it will change my writing. I'm not entirely rural to the point where...
Not rustic.
Yeah, I'm like right off the freeway, pretty much.
Okay, I see.
So I got a highway right in my front yard, you know. So it's, but my backyard is like this. pretty much. We don't have a river. We got a creek a little bit of ways, and just trees and
Yeah.
deers that come around. Deer, sorry.
Deer hearts, and dear ones. They're all there. Let's go to the. Last time I talked to you, we were talking a lot about. I can't remember what project it was, but was it the first album we were discussing?
I think we kind of touched on all of them and talked about the maybe sort of the connectedness and the scope of their evolution.
Well, then Mono no Aware, right?
Yes.
Is how you pronounce it. And can you explain what that means and like how that kind of became the title, but also like, you know, why you chose it in this way in terms of the ongoing theme that you've got going?
I was writing a song one time on my piano, and it's a song that I still kind of remember, but I haven't released it or no real, it just kind of sits there like some do. And in it, a line just came to me that was out of my window, the cherry blossoms fall and make a blanket on the lawn. And the rest of the song had certain imagery relating to like a certain concept that later is delved into on Mono no Aware and will be more so on the next project. But so I was curious as to why cherry blossoms came to me, because I've never seen them. I don't know. It was just a word to me, but like in the image in my head, like there was a weight to it. So I went and did a Google on cherry blossoms and looked at them and saw these like real pretty pink flowers, pink and white. And then I came across something mentioning them in reference to Mono no Aware. They are symbolic of this sentiment, which is the pathos of all things, or meditating on the ephemerality of existence, the idea of, you know, all things must pass sort of deal, and even, you know, just change and evolution. And it was like this kind of weighted thing, and I liked the idea of a foreign language being able to just have a phrase that, to me, I don't hear it as words, you know, like I have to translate it in my head if I want to think about it, but it just becomes like a feeling. And I appreciate that about sometimes older languages, is they can have a word that encapsulates so much energy without having to go on to a kind of like discussion about it.
Right.
And I partly used it, then it became even more synchronistic to me because in researching it, it was an old literary style used a lot in Japan before World War II. And after World War II, everybody became more modern and technology-based and science and Godzilla and Astro Boy and stuff like that. And I want to double-check this, but I swear, like 2010, 2011, 2012, right around then, when I had released Nothing Special at All, somebody, a Japanese writer, wrote a book to try to bring back the essence of Mono no Aware as a literary style. And the title of his book was O, like the, exasperated, like O-H exclamation.
Right.
And on Nothing Special at All, I have a song that's titled O exclamation point H hyphen, so O.
Right.
So it was like this weird thing that I kind of knew it was a connective tissue. And then once the material for Mono no Aware started to be developed, it already was being developed, but once the collection of songs really solidified, I felt that was a real fitting dress to put on the lady.
Okay. Sometimes I talk to people who talk about, in terms of poetry at least, feeling as though they're being dictated to. Do you have that feeling when you're writing music? Do you find that you're discovering something that's already there, or that you're more the act of creating and therefore a lot more has to go into it?
I think each sort of song project idea is its own kind of entity and has to be helped to blossom in its own way. And I think maybe it might be different for writers, because I remember reading Grant Morrison talk about that. When he gets really into a character, they just will write themselves, and you walk around thinking like Cyclops or Batman or something. And I was just reading about Bill Watterson, who was talking about how when he first started developing Calvin and Hobbes, he knew the characters kind of came to life. He could tell there was a lot to do with it. And I feel that way like with song ideas and material. Some of them are more just like inspired. They happen and you can tell that there's a potency there. And it becomes like an exchange between you and the muse, as it were. But I also believe sometimes it feels like the songs exist beforehand. I had I don't know if I call it a revelation or an awareness, but when I was in a more distraught place of being, it occurred to me that the songs and all the art and everything that we do ourselves is there before us.
Yeah.
And its desire to be manifested manipulates our experience because it tapped us as the vessel. So in order for us to understand that work and be able to express its self, well, it needs to put us through certain life experiences so we can understand it and come closer.
There's a whole family of geese that are just disembarking from the water only about 10 feet from us.
Yeah, it's real amazing. Fuzzy.
Yeah.
They're like almost adolescent goslings. They're all fuzzy.
I wonder if they can fly yet.
No.
Like they just were, they're about half the size of their parents.
Yeah, they're not super babies, but they're... Hi. This is why, when you asked why I'd like to come here,
Yeah.
because I would come here and I would be super still, and you get to experience this like natural world, like squirrels, and come out birds, and you know these geese are city geese, so desensitized somewhat.
Yeah, they're used to people at this point, but this is about as close as you usually get.
And with their babies like that, just strolling.
Yeah.
This is
They're comfortable with people, that's for sure.
it's a blessing.
Well, yeah. Yeah, right. Just distracted by this family.
This fight you cannot win. This fight you cannot win. This fort you cannot defend. This fight you cannot win. Better ride your will. Better ride your will. Better Take care of your kin. This cancer has set in. This cancer has set in.
Just distracted by this family here. Well, we're sitting at the edge of the river, and we're talking about existence and the ephemerality of it, and the Mano no Aware style. The spirituality that is kind of infused in all of your music, and certainly, at least I sense it. And you have your recent video for the song. Oh, help me on this one. I'm just
Write Your Will?
Yeah, I'm looking at these geese and I'm losing all my thoughts. But Write Your Will has a lot of interesting imagery in it. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that in terms of the Mano no Aware style, but also in its own way. Like, that video says something about the song. And so I'm guessing the video was kind of conceived of post-song. Or
yeah,
am I wrong on that?
No, you're right. The song has been around for a while. I've mocked a couple demos of it. I tried different things with it. Is one I like to use as like a sketch.
Later, guys.
Bye. They're paddling away, the little geese family. But the once Write Your Will became, you know, a part of this collection of works, it became dressed in the imagery of, I guess, the overall story arc that I'm working on. So the video, and it comments on the song as a whole, but also can be seen as a loose interpretation of the King Deer tracks on the album, and also sort of an overall arc for the album itself as a whole. So microcosmically and I guess macrocosmically or artistically, macro art and whatever, however you want to divide it, it translates to that. And
in the video, you're kind of playing yourself and you're playing this King Deer character. And there are moments, I remember you were like preparing me emotionally for it. You said something like, you're going to see me in the video struggling, and I'm like, I really like the video a lot.
Thank you.
I think it's very well done, but what I like especially is the emotionality that you kind of captured, and the disconnect between the person you are and the person you want to become, and the idea of having to write your will and correct your course, you know, or set a course even.
Correct your intent.
Correct your intent. And but there's a lyric in there that pops up and it says, "This cancer has set in." Do you let that line exist for kind of an interpretation, or do you have more intent behind it than that?
There's different dimensions to that. I guess in a way, I'll back up because it'll tie in when you mentioned who you are and what you want to become. And the idea of trying to depict it in the video, not to the extent really, but we're all subtle victims of like post-traumatic stress disorder, and in a way it can create like a schism in our brains and create like certain personality disorders or aspects of ourselves that we maybe don't like, or all these depressive thoughts that just occur to people out of nowhere, and then it's their own minds belittling themselves, you know, and it's this vicious cycle, and they overreact and take it out on other people, and we're all just shitting on each other. Sorry, we can edit that out.
Don't worry about it. You could put a goose honk over it.
I'll give you a goose honk.
Not in front of the goslings.
So, and what can happen to people in that state, in severe cases of it, because I said we're all mildly, subtly, just enough to create a disorder.
Yeah.
But when you have an extreme case of that, that's when you get like personality disorders. When you're doing it intentionally to somebody, you like cause them all this stress and trauma, and you crack their brain, and you create like a code, like the Manchurian Candidate kind of concept. And then that personality becomes a slave to a master. And when you're subtly, and you can probably see this a lot from the troops that come back, because they're given the master is the military, is do your job. They come home and there is no master, but there's still the broken slave personality. And I say slave as in even computer networking chains. You have your master console, and then the other machines that are linked and networked and clocked into that one are considered slaves, so not having any kind of connotation. And then there's no master. So they become distraught and despondent. If you want to see, like, people when they reach a certain age is maybe freaking out because they've gone through this, never resolved it. They created like a false edifice to operate under, and it's shattering. And it usually will shatter right around the Saturn return. 28, 29 in people, I notice, because that's this big karmic barrier and like disciplinary planet and just measure of your progress and how much work you've put in. And if there's this disconnect, it's going to kind of upheave you, and your internal self might rebel against it. So it's the idea of, you know, we're looking for saviors a lot of times. Somebody come save me, and we gotta like, we can save ourselves. And the idea expressed in the video imagery is creating an entity. Like when you split, you can create this other entity that's bigger and stronger than you, but in essence it's you. It can be this, you know, if you want to consider it a spirit guardian, or, you know, if you want it to be Batman and just pretend Batman's out there. But if it's a personal aspect of you, once you reach that age of sort of like maturity, I guess, late 20s, early 30s, it becomes time to reincorporate that entity that was protecting you back into yourself and heal yourself and become a whole person again. And that's what's kind of being depicted in that video. There's a subtle shift in time you can see happening through the displacement, and the idea of like this troubled individual, the world encroaching in on our identity and sense of self and value, and this in the video, the difference between where it's the real person, the difference between the city experiences and when he's in the wild, and how the city is very cold, very stark, very rigid and overtowering, and he's getting like pushed around and everything, like
a lot of conflicts erupting.
Mm-hmm.
All the interactions that character, that version of you, I guess, especially to describe the character, all the interactions he faces in the city are inherently they're full of conflict. Like, you're getting pushed around by people who don't mean it.
In
the video they mean it, but like in real life they would never do that, obviously. But it's interesting to me that those are the folks that you called in to play those parts, you know, because they kind of understood what you were going for in some ways, but they were also willing. But you know,
and even if they didn't, they're
look at
oh
wow, a whole bunch of baby ducks.
10 baby ducks and its parents. This is a really neat spot, Keith. I'm glad we found it.
Yeah. They're finding us. Hi, guys.
Oh, and it just turned to face, so she's showing her children us. She's like, look at the people.
Yeah.
Oh, this is
Dad is way out in the middle of the river right now, and then Mom has got the babies. They're all coming over to this landing spot, I think, where the geese
Yeah.
just came from.
This is
That's-
so adorable.
It's got to be the place where all the snacks are.
And it's an easy on, easy up for the young ones. Just ship
I
them
don't think
out.
I've seen this many babies up close before. Oh, I think they're going to turn away, though. That's okay.
No, they're gonna go a little bit further down. Oh.
No, Dad's like so far away now.
He's protecting. He's keeping lookout.
Oh, here they come.
Oh.
It's D-Day. Duck Day.
This is the most quiet interview you probably had. Just 'cause we keep
Well,
watching
see, yeah,
the
we keep
geese.
hushing down to watch animals. But I think that's like some of the best stuff in terms of what you're talking about overall in that video is that when you're in nature, you can be at peace and you can encounter things differently. Whereas in the city, in the urban environment, you tend to encounter more conflict because people are more driven towards, they're more goal-oriented thinking. Where
More linear.
and you have no choice if you're doing linear work or linear thinking. You have to go straight ahead. More often than not, it involves you kind of going through, and it's easier to go through people than it is edifice.
Well, and even if you look at the way a city's arranged, where it's all grid work, straight, left, right, back, and then you get to walk, like when we were walking through here, I mean, granted there's paths, but you can see how nature flows like a river. And when we ourselves are allowed to flow more naturally and in tune with our own concept, that again is as a healing process and allows us to be stronger, healthier, more capable individuals. Kind of like in that video, you can see the character acting out this aggression, and it's like, but he's acting it out at the protector.
Yeah.
So I'm illustrating how we'll turn on those that'll keep us safe. Like he goes in and has a tantrum in the forest, but the forest is so big, it's like your mother, a really strong mother that will, when you're frustrated, all kids I'm sure have taken things out on their mothers, and it maybe hurt them really deeply, but they took it and they would still love us for it. And then in the end he exhausts himself to where he's like on, a sacrificial altar almost. And when he's like collapsed on that stone, and it's almost, he offers up, when you get so exhausted and life has just beat you down so much, you've got nowhere to go, nothing, no recourse, your only recourse is to offer up yourself. Like he gave himself up to like sort of a different level of awareness, help me become out of this. And then you switch to the magical, like the spirit world, I guess we could say, where King Deer is marching to the ocean.
Yeah.
It's sort of like when the boy needed him, he was in that world fighting battles for him against the demons of his soul. And the demons started to come out in the form of the city people in the real world. So he needed King Deer's energy in this reality. He needed to bring him back home. So what's happening there is sort of like the send-off in the spirit world of the King Deer energy is going to descend almost back into a more corporeal existence. He's going to become reincorporated with the boy again.
I was going to ask, like when we last did this interview, like a lot of things hadn't happened in culture in general and in the world in general, and there's like been like just another shooting, and everyone's kind of taking that off into a big conversation, mostly to do with how men relate to women. But I wanted to talk about that in terms of the person relating to themselves and a failure that happens. The creative impulse that you and I may experience acts more as can act as anything you want to. It's so malleable. Like it becomes a savior, it becomes a device, it becomes an engine, a friend, a blanket. It's so many things. That's what we allow. If you allow the creative impulse to do that for you, do you find that maybe, do you encounter the ideas that people that don't have that creative impulse tend to be the ones that are acting destructively because the idea of to create something is not inherent in them, perhaps?
I don't know if it's that. I haven't noticed maybe a tendency among people who are not passionate about something, and maybe a healthy something, maybe a creative something, whether or not it's a creative impulse, but something that produces life. We become, and we are a consumer culture, so we get used to consuming media ideas. We're inundated with stimulation that a lot of people don't take the time to go inside, work through their own issues and really be the people that they want to be, or see if they're trying to be somebody that is not right for them or healthy. They never make that awareness shift. And I know in losing yourself into something, anything, any sort of passion in a healthy way, it becomes like that mirror. It becomes that ability to analyze yourself, and you find so many different, just thought patterns and processes and desires and obsessions that we maybe not would have ever acknowledged had we not dissected ourselves to that point.
Mm-hmm.
Again, reading Bill Watterson, I just got the Calvin and Hobbes complete collected editions volume 1 from the library. I've been on a big reawakening childhood kick lately, as if I haven't been my whole life. But going back to those moments, and there's this nice foreword in there where he talks about his relationship to Calvin and Hobbes and the art form, and it was interesting to see how he didn't even realize as he was doing it how much of his own personal psychology and ideas was coming out in this strip, especially in the early days once he realized it. And even now, he said, looking back 10 years, he's still even more so amazed by how naked he was bearing his soul for the readers. But again, he was isolated, so to him it was a personal thing. We were all reading it every day and loving it, but that wasn't why he was unveiling himself. It was just his own personal process, and whether or not a lot of people are afraid to even explore creative endeavors because of fear of failure and not being good enough, but the whole reason is not to be good enough. The whole reason is to continually work. You are the work. The alchemist idea of the philosopher's stone is really your own being, and that's what's being refined through study and understanding.
Do you think the problem inherent in, I'll say music critics, but we could mean all critics now, is that they're no longer adjusting their way of thinking to the artist? If I wanted to do a critique of your work, I would have to have these this knowledge of you, this kind of conversation in order to do that comfortably. And if I decided that I didn't like it, it would be a point of, well, this is where I departed with him in terms of our thinking, and that is why I disagree with this particular artistic choice. And now it seems like critics and people that are responsible for things are so caught up in judging music based on sales and popularity and accessibility that there's no coming to the artist anymore. That they stopped doing that at some point. And I think I'm asking this only because I'm always curious when you say you drive yourself to create and you're sort of away from everyone, like Bill Watterson didn't know that people responded that way except through occasional mail.
Sales and stuff. You knew he had hit something big, but anyway.
Right, but it wasn't because he was desperate to bare his soul. He was trying to create a really good strip. But it was when he started doing that, he connected with people. Getting through that layer, though, now seems to be a little bit more difficult because of the way that everything is set up.
It's interesting. I'll go there and work backwards. In that Bill Watterson, I watched a documentary on it. It was really cool. It's on Netflix. Dear Mr. Watterson, I think. Okay. Really fun. I teared up, but I'm a softie. That work is a really beautiful thing, and looking back upon it, I realized how much it really affected me. But in that documentary, they talk about that will never happen again. The phenomenon of Calvin and Hobbes, they're like, that is the last comic strip cultural icon that we will have that's cross-generational. Everything, the whole media has changed the way it's done it. So now it doesn't only affect music, but it affects comics. because they're talking, you can go find really awesome web comics, but you got to go to this page for this one and this page for this one. You can't just open up a page and be experienced in it. And he made a good point, Mr. Watterson, on the idea that the comic strip art form in the papers was the only way where you would really get a one-on-one interaction with millions of people every day. Like comics, Sunday through Saturday.
Yeah.
Every day, all year, for 10 years, you have this relationship that you get to nurture. So that, again, is changing with the face of media today. I think the idea of critics, I think a good work of art would be able to stand on its own, outside of knowing the artist. So if I did a good job with my work, and as much as they want, I want as much background knowledge as they have about maybe what I'm putting in there isn't necessarily a concern to me, because I understand the energies that are going in it, and I like to relate it so that it's able to transcend that. Like, I don't, like some poetry, you need to have like a doctorate in like literature, across the world to really understand the subtext of it. Doesn't make it any less brilliant, but we're kind of talking about connecting here, and part of I guess the reason I consider Vedic Eden like a mystic folk pop ensemble is like that folk music, that idea of music that can be for the people and understandable, and talking about concepts that are being dealt with. I don't go the socio-economic political route that is traditionally folk, but I guess it's sort of a newer movement. I mean, we know that system's messed up, and if we try to analyze why maybe that's messed up, it's just kind of because we forgot, to really love ourselves. We stopped going in, and we started reaching out to everything to kind of tell us who and what we are and what's important, instead of, going inside and being still and trying to remember what it was like to just be a human being. And critics are gonna say what they're gonna say, I think, they're part of the machine, and if somebody's gonna review a record, I'm not sure how much time they're able to give to it. Do they listen to it all day to really get a feel for an essence of the subtleties? When we listen to an album and it really clicks, there's something that grabs us, but it's that relationship that we build over time that gives it its meaning. Like, I have lyrics from The Doors and Jim Morrison's poetry that I can't even probably remember the exact song they came out of, but just a phrase will come into my head out of nowhere, and it'll perfectly fit a situation. Just this ambient, poetic thought, and I'm like, this is what he was talking about, and it becomes this thread that's woven throughout your life because of all that time you spent, in that world that's created by the artist. So a critic necessarily doesn't have the opportunity at the time of a review to have given it that much time, and they've got to turn it into words and put it out there, and sometimes it's hard. I almost wish they would do more descriptive, instead of saying this is good or this is bad. Yeah. If maybe they would kind of just tell you what the album is about. It could help better what occurs on the album. Sometimes I've read a review and they describe it in this real flowery language, and I go listen to the album and I'm like, I don't hear that at all. So it's all perception and reality based, and honestly, where I'm at, any attention is great. If somebody gave me a really bad review, I'd laugh. I think actually, I had one, and I was so grateful for it. I was even grateful that the poetry on the album, there's moments where he called it pretentious. I'm like, well, at least I got called something in that respect. And not that I'm hungry for attention, the antithesis of Bill Watterson, but in, again, different media, you got to kind of be able to, if you want to help people and reach people. And with my music, I know a lot of musicians say that's what they want to do, but I like to try to give a little something more in that. If the person is quiet and if it speaks to them, it'll really speak to them. And a song like Write Your Will can seem harsh, if you think about it, but there's something powerful in it, even to me, and if you're in that right spot, it can push some stuff through you. Yeah. It can help cleanse, and and I know that's like why you would listen to like metalheads and stuff like
Right.
that stuff, because it pushes whatever they're dealing with out. I just hit
Oh, wait.
a nice.
Dragonfly. I don't want your bites.
That's a little bumblebee. He's fine.
Oh, it's a bumblebee?
Not a bumblebee, just a regular bee.
Oh, I thought it was a dragonfly for some reason. Well, my question now, when you have to go to play live, what kind of things do you try to incorporate into the experience? And do you do it differently each time you've played live? I've seen you a number of times, and when you're just solo, it's interesting to hear you playing your guitar, but you have also the full Vedic Eden band occasionally now, and I was curious what sound you kind of go for. Is it based on availability or?
Yeah, it's a marriage. I've always enjoyed creating. You've got to give up a certain amount of control because you're working in, a 3D reality, a dense existence. So whatever idea you have or whatever you want to manifest is not. It has to go through some barriers and time. And I am so grateful. I know everybody maybe says this. I feel like I have the most beautiful band in the world. These guys, they really give a lot of themselves for this project, and we don't get a lot of financial support, but it has become this labor of love. I feel they've all expressed as well. For us, it's become this therapy, and we get together, and everybody is so friendly and nice and smiley and just full of appreciation for each other. There's no ego trips, there's no games, and everybody's trying to, just play this right, and it's nice because they feel it. And it's because of our practice schedule, we can't always get everybody together at the same time all the time. So for us, sometimes when we actually play the show, it's like a nice moment where we all finally get to see and be around each other and check in, and then it's fun for us because we get to experience it in its fullness, really as freshly as the audience does. Right. And that adds to our level of enjoyment. And I guess it's not so much the sound comes as it comes with. It's the full band. It's pretty much, what's arranged. And when we have to break off in smaller groups, it maintains its integrity with the amount of layers in the music. So we can still make it happen. But it's that feeling that I guess I go for, that just we really come out of a love, when we get together every practice. There's like, I don't know, just a connection. And the nature of the work, I think, is it takes a little bit of that to put the energy into these songs that is needed every time I play it, whether it's solo or live. It sometimes can take, a little bit out of us. Like, a lot of people, after you play a show, and I've played shows too, where you feel all buzzy about it, adrenaline rush. But when we get off of these shows, there's like such a release, and we'll like feel so like we just elevated our vibrations, kind of. It's a weird thing, but I'm so grateful to have these people that enjoy it and love it and get it. And it's really become I guess love and trust go hand in hand in a kind of weird way. And as we've come closer and trust has been stronger in the vision, that I'm trying to create with their assistance, and then my trust goes back to them, and then it becomes this love fest, because you're honoring the trust that you all put in each other.
Right. Some of the other songs on the new album, I wondered if you want to talk a little bit about them and see where they were kind of driving you, or where they came from, and how they're going to lead you into the next phase of your songwriting. If that's too big of a question, I could narrow it down. I know, like, what are you going to do next? Well, but really, I guess what I'm asking is, you seem to have everything not mapped out beforehand necessarily, but you have a general idea as to what you're attempting to do with each new album. Seems like a phase of your musical expression.
Yeah, when I had to retake math classes, it was really interesting. It never occurred to me, but when you really boil math down, it's all about relationships and trajectory. And that, once I got that, it like opened up this whole new concept of life, because I was already like interested in energy work, and that works on similar mathematics, scientific principles, and laws of equal exchange. And you have trajectory, where you send the energy and how you send it, or are you receiving it, directional. I forgot why I went on that tangent, but anyway, so the sound, that's kind of how I guess I approach the music, and is I kind of have a direction. And when you look at a line, it's not, there is no, right? They say there's no such thing as a line. All it is a bunch of points connected through it. And so each of those points are like an idea, and then the line is the is like movement, is like verbiage, moving across these lines. The points just point out the trajectory, and then the movement follows it. And so that's kind of how I feel like with the music that I do, whether it's a single note in a piece, or whether it's a song on an album, or whether it's an album within a series. That's kind of how I guess I approach it. And I maybe, coming from a love of like comic books and literature and like stories, I write sort of shorter songs, and the lyrics aren't very long sometimes. They can be kind of short, and there's not a lot of them. But I like thinking in larger scale works. So I'll think conceptually. So if I approach an album, even if it's just a bunch of singles, I'll kind of get an overall feel or vibe about the whole thing. How do everything relate to each other? Again, relationships and trajectory, where are we going to go with it? And so each album that I've done in the series, so far for Vedic Eden, I call it a series because I do have an idea of how it's going to conclude, and then I'll make a whole nother shift, context-wise, arrangement-wise. I've been working with different ideas about arranging and writing music, and using the band, and kind of drawing out different influences in a more dominant way that I've kept sort of subtle, like some of the world influences I want to bring out a little bit more. And then I like the idea of when you do works to have like layered, like Joycean concepts, where a character's name is a character's name, and that's the character, but then you analyze the name, and the character really represents one of the 4 like personal archetypes that, you know, transcend all ancient traditions and stuff like that. And then you analyze the other characters and realize they all represent that. And then you read the book and you realize you're reading like almost like a technical book, a technical pamphlet about the nature of energy interaction. If you strip the metaphor and the personalities off of it, and you just study the trajectory and relationship of the energy being discussed, you can kind of see it in a different way. So I enjoy doing that with the projects, and finding an arc I'm going to use to sort of overlay the work on. The work has its own arc, but when you can find a similar arc to like mash it with, it's kind of cool. And then there's the idea sort of expressed in Right Here Will is that there's the idea that this is a story that is created. These songs are to some degree all fictional and all related, but at the same time it's all autobiographical and related in that kind of context. So again, like the Bill Watterson idea, or any artist, where I've worked through issues with these songs. So, and as much as I maybe disguise them, and I've tried to capture an energy that I was dealing with in life and process through that, and maybe I didn't realize what I was actually working through until it came out. I like to be as consciously unconscious as I can when I write, to let something come.
The music that you've been creating for like some time now has always been for the Vedic Eden purposes, what you describe as mystic folk pop, but you're versed in jazz style playing guitar, right?
Yeah, I would say a high-end amateur, maybe.
High-end amateur.
Yeah, I got some kinks to work out, but I really dig the theoretical concepts and the approach. I'd look at that as a long-term thing for myself. That over these years I will continually improve upon, because I feel like it's the forge or the discipline of it. I can get lost in composing and stuff, but when it comes to just the mastery of your own instrument, and I'm also a mastery of music theory and knowledge, and it has that place for me of this is where you go to work on your stuff. This is where you go not just to work on yourself, but work on you. In a harder edge, whereas creating you work on yourself, but it's more mental. When you do, like, the jazz stuff is very mental, but it becomes more of a physical thing. You have to own the mental and translate it into the physical form really well, so it just becomes a straight fluid flow from spirit to hand in real time. When I work with the Vedic Eden, it's the same concept, you know, and I've drilled these grooves, but there's a little bit more of a, like, the songs are more arranged.
Right. Speaking of arrangements, ducks are back. They're going upstream this time, so it's slow going. They're giving us the full view.
They're kicking their little legs off.
They're working really hard. Mom's leading the way. She's doing a good job. I'm going to play a couple of the songs off of the album during the interview. Is there any preference?
Dollar bill lying in defeat. The banker's bones have done bled him dry. There is a moment of truth when you all know what to do. Fencing or alibis. The creeper come drawing down the blinds. There ain't no time to give up. Pull out your fist from the cup. We've got to get up off our knees and fly. We've got to spread our wings and touch the sky. We've got to break these chains up off our minds. We've got to raise our light and let it shine, let it shine. Flashing lights, they hypnotize. A silent shift inside absent eyes. Another soldier dead and gone. Decoration on the lawn. Put the medal on the mantle. The shrapnel caused the battle. Right in that saddle, treating people like cattle. Sick of political prattle. Saber-tooth rattles, a blathering addled. Son of a snake, we've got to get up off our knees and fly. We've got to spread our wings and touch the sky. We've got to break these chains up off our minds. We've got to raise our light and let it shine, let it shine. Oh, let it shine.
Daedalus Dreaming. That might be a...
Daedalus Dreaming, yeah. How did you... Because, my first thing, we were just talking, you said something about Joyce, actually. Just think of Stephen Daedalus right away.
Yep.
Yeah, so... Is that where that comes from, or are you going further back to the...
Both.
The other Daedalus?
Well, the song, is called Daedalus Dreaming, and then in parentheses, How to Fly.
Yeah.
The hook is, we've got to get up off our knees and fly, sort of concept. So I like that ingenuity aspect, but there's a little bit of reference to the Joycean idea. And by Moonlight and Vines, there's the song A Long Time, where there's a line, Icarus abandoned me, left me to my misery, threw up in a stranger's hallway, or passed out in a stranger's hallway, threw up on my suit coat, my brother come and carried me home. Mm-hmm. So that idea of the whole, that relates to this, like, and the concepts of all these albums are like a story arc. So a reference on one is going to relate to a reference on another one, like that.
So the idea of flying comes back into your work a lot.
Yeah.
Is that maybe an allusion to the notions of transcendence?
Yeah, transcendence, empowerment, seeing a bigger picture, sort of, looking at the whole of everything.
I just flew to Kansas City on Friday and came back on a bus, but the flight out was really a lot more interesting, obviously. You see the way that we're kind of putting everything into a grid pattern.
I know.
From up in the air, and it's disturbing, but it's also kind of comical in some ways, because you get to those points where there's a river, and you can't really do much about that. You can't make a grid out of that too easily. So then the river becomes this natural boundary, and there are hills and things that sometimes also force the hand of the people that want to make these straight lines happen in reality so much. And that's that linear thinking that we're trying to impose upon our surroundings at all times. But you see this when you're flying over everything, and then you are just removed enough from it, and you can see, like, this is futile. It's absolutely pointless to be doing some of these things that people are doing. But those are, as much as it's also linear thinking, that's maybe the way that somebody is choosing to harness their creative powers in a given time.
And I look at it as the flight thing, the down and up, is to find the marriage of it, because then it's like, right, the old monks, the crazy powerful ones living in the woods and like China and the mountains in Japan and stuff, and they go out to the world, they call it the dragon's lair, because it doesn't do any good to sit up in a mountain all by yourself and be holy. You gotta purify yourself there. And then you come back to the world, and then that becomes the challenge. You have to maintain uncorrupted, and you have to observe existence and only intervene when it's necessary. Unfortunately, sometimes when you reach a state, you have to kind of let drama play itself out, because if you force something, it doesn't help. But you also kind of got to be there to help things flow smoothly and assist in certain impedances. And the idea sort of translated at the in the Write Your Will video at the end and throughout, the idea of this higher self and the lower self, as it were, coming together to form a positive energy exchange, and you can operate from both places at once.
Tadpole. And you operate from both places at once quite frequently in your music. And being a person who plays an instrument and also does the vocals, you have to do that because you're thinking mathematically, but you're also having to emote.
And in the Vedic Eden, a lot of times the nature, I give everybody their parts. I write them down. A lot of times the percussion parts I'll just speak to them and stuff, or I'll speak out parts or we'll go. But it's like knowing the music myself so well, because I got to give cues when we play and stuff and help, and just like if I want to change something or feel something slightly different way, and it really comes as success as close as I can be to it. So I got to be within myself and kind of aware of the whole group, and it kind of relates to how we were talking about writing for yourself isolatedly and externally. If you think about wings and flight and the sky as expansion. When somebody asked me one time, how do you write for yourself, both yourself and write for other people? And that's sort of the magic. I think anytime we take two contradictions and put them together, we get something really beautiful. And it becomes that marriage. Like, even, again, going back, because it's my theme, Bill Watterson was saying how earlier, when you work for a syndicate in comic strips, you send like months of strips to them for approval.
Yeah.
So, and then they can deny you some. They'll be like, nope, we don't, nope, this one doesn't work, not this one, change this. And he had he didn't know what the strip was going to be exactly at first, and he had experimented with breaking that fourth wall, or whatever it's called, with Calvin and Hobbes acknowledging that they were in a comic strip. And he was so grateful that the syndicate denied that. He's like, because what was I thinking? If this imaginary world of Calvin is supposed to be believable at all, they have to believe it. I can't have them knowing that they're in a comic strip. That breaks the whole joy of it.
Yeah.
So there's an idea of, you think creative enterprise, art, all that coming into context with the business aspect of it, and you'd think it would diminish, but in the end you had something stronger and greater. And even you follow that struggle of Bill Watterson to get creative liberty over his art, then you have the alternate side where Sunday panels had to be laid out in such a way that the papers themselves could cut out panels if they wanted, or rearrange it or order it. And later on in his career, he never thought much about his work as an art. He just did it, and once it started being manipulated and stretched out and compressed, he got personal about it and started researching these older comics like Crazy Cat, where they would do these beautiful half-page, full-page spreads and could change the shape and the layout and let the content dictate the layout instead of the layout dictate the content. And he had to fight for that. And again, his syndicate actually backed him up on that. So that's when he was able to do these that's when his Sunday strips took on this beautiful watercolored, expansive, artistic. And really, he helped to could take that art to a new level if more people had been willing to catch on and work with that.
Well, I have the 10th anniversary Calvin and Hobbes, where he goes back and writes in some commentary underneath a lot of his strips. And what I thought was interesting about that was he was talking a lot about linear progressions in characters, because he was doing plot work. And in order to get a lot done in terms of just having stuff to give to the papers, you would give yourself a plot to deal with. And okay, let's send Calvin and Hobbes camping. And so he did that, and that gave him 10 weeks of material. And then he had to come up with this throwaway Sunday strips that could feed into the plot, but they might not necessarily be used by any of the papers in some of the regions that he was going to.
Yeah.
Translate that into music. Do you find that you can put music out there live without having to record it ever? Or has it become a process now where nothing can be thrown away? I don't mean that and I don't want, it sounds almost condescending in some ways, but it's not about value necessarily in art, but so much as it is about moments.
Yeah.
We used to have a lot of moments on stage, at the stage right. You would be doing things, nothing was recorded, and you were experimenting quite a bit, and it was a public place where you were doing some of these experiments. And it became an interesting thing to me to see the songs that were getting written coming out more and more as you were kind of left to your own device.
Yeah.
You had these things that you could just go to, but then you also had times where you could just play the kind of jazz music that you had been working on initially when you first started there.
I've kind of, I don't know, I'm just happy to be able to do anything, and with art, sometimes we gotta let it go. I don't try to hold on, give too much attachment to a moment. It's kind of that I like to relieve myself of my successes and my failures. So I'm as momentary as possible. Then the only thing that really matters is what am I doing right now, whether it's recording or am I playing live. And I try not to be too attached to, I'll get down at a show because you have to be critical of yourself if you want to improve and get better. And that to me is what it's all about, is that quest to improve and refine myself. I was told one time, not necessarily on this concept of oneself, but a teacher told me, I played a solo or whatever, jazz solo. It was like sort of taking me off guard. It was like in my school, it was like an open jazz jam, and you know, we're setting it up, and I was talking to some guy in the hallway that called me, hey man, they want you jamming on this too, and I'm like, oh shit, run in, and it's like just a blues straight no chaser, but you know, they took it pretty fast, and it was like started when I got in, and like, okay, head 1 2 3 4, you know, you jump in, and I felt all discombobulated, and the solo came, and I kind of, you know, I throw myself up into the moment. That's all you can do when it's go time, you know, and that's why we work a lot in that setting. You have to work yourself to fire under the gun, and even when I create now, I do scoring work for my friend's video company, doing promotional videos and stuff, and you have deadlines, and you need to have this song done in this kind of way in this time frame. So you get used to working under pressure, but I played the solo, and I was like, oh man, I just didn't feel it. Like, I felt I was reaching the whole time, and I didn't feel like I communicated. I didn't feel like I had anything to say. I was just blah, blah, blah. And he looked at me like puzzled, and he's like, you didn't look at the audience at all, did you? I'm like, no. He's like, you didn't see it. You don't know. He's like, maybe it's a good thing that you don't know. He's like, you're looking for this thing. He's like, you're never going to find it, man. It's an impossible quest. And I like understood what he was talking about. And then tenacious old me is like, I'm not going to give up. Like personally, I feel like I'm going to go after that impossible quest, that hero's journey. Not that I'm on a hero's journey, but in the end, that's kind of what it's about. To go back, even Bill Watterson is pursuing that personal refinement. After Calvin and Hobbes, he really started working with oil paintings and trying this art that he wasn't as good at, just to know and improve himself. He started researching it and found a real like love and joy for it.
Yeah. Well, you have to give yourself permission too to experiment and try to create outside of the usual norms in which you are doing it. You know, I'm writing poetry, but doing weird things too, like the polka hip hop band. You know, which by the way we're playing together.
Friday, the Cactus Club.
Right. I hope this isn't too late in the interview to discuss that. You know, but we'll bring it back around. I wanted to get to that, though, like the ideas of playing these shows out and just get to having fun, you know. And you've gotten to play out with a lot of different people through the Vedic Eden, but you've also gotten to play out a lot with different people and different projects that you're a part of. Are you particularly into or enjoying any of the other projects besides Vedic Eden at this point?
Yeah, all of them.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Once I was asked, I was doing another video thing, working on a cartoon show or something, just a little short public service thing, and some other people were brought in to do the music, and I was going to be working with them, and they sat me down and asked me, so what is music to you? And it's really funny. I came from a photo shoot with Alexis, and so these guys are like established, you know, a known band. They're predominant, they're professional, you know, it's a business to them. And I show up there after a photo shoot with Alexis. I've got like pink glitter in my mustache and beard. I've got like green like eyeliner that was like faded from sleeping in. I've got my like, you know, black cap with my yellow Batman symbol on it, and I show up and they're like, what is music to you? I just try to not laugh because I was reading this. I'm like, you may as well ask a fish about water. Like music to me has become this whole interface. It's how I've met, since I've been in Milwaukee, I've met so many great friends and people, and I've met really powerful and inspiring and positive people. I've made so many great connections, and it's all through music. And I'm so grateful that has been a vehicle for me. Were it not for that, I would have been a much more isolated person. I wouldn't have had to go out and make contacts and meet people and change myself as a person in order to function better within a community like that. Granted, I mean, we've all got work to do, and that's part of the personal refinement, and as music being a means through which I have to continually refine my own person. In a different way, like, cause the business side of it, you know, I've had to be more responsible and mature, and you know, when you're essentially your own business, you set your moral standard too. So there's all sorts of crazy, you know, things that I've had to really come to terms with within myself and resolve and improve. And And I mean, good things, you help them grow even more so.
Well, seems like that's a good spot to close the interview. Is there anything else you would like to just establish?
My sovereignty? No.
How about a nation for the ducks?
Duck wall nation. Build a wall out of ducks.
The Duck Defense Force.
Yeah. Oh,
I want the little baby ducks to come back, but they're somewhere else right now.
they've gone north for the summer.
I think they went across the river and then north again.
I don't know. There's just, know yourself and love yourself is a crazy, cheesy concepts, but they do wonders in helping things happen. Learn to believe in yourself. Become a person that you want to believe in. And that's the best way, I think. No matter what you do, just you can find a spot in your mind or your heart where you can hold that love and like nurture it. Don't forget the joy of existence. Remember, when we were kids and life was just, Calvin and Hobbes, the world is full of possibilities.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful way to have ended that series. I'm taking that to heart. One of those things, every once in a while, even when I was real down and out, I'd sit there and that last image of that blank paper with them sledding off, and life is full of possibilities.
So is the river.
We were making our plans, we were packing our bags, had a foot on the plane, had a face in the sand. Now you're under attack and you're flat on your back, a relapse. So what happened? Oh baby, I can get you something to eat, anything that you need. I'll be back in a flash before you could bat a lash. Then maybe draw you a bath or a picture of someone you love. Well, you're a beautiful soul and you brighten the world, and here I just got to know you. I don't want you to go, I want you around. I want to watch you grow old. I will heal you with sound. I am a resonator. I will heal you with sound. I will heal you with sound. I am a resonator. I will heal you with sound. I will heal you with sound. I am a resonator. I will heal you with sound. I will heal you with sound. I am a resonator. I will heal you with sound. You're gonna get better. 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 And we could shoot at the moon, and we could block out the sun, bring our cities to ruin, and we could kill everyone. Why can't we just get one person better, from worse, from sickness to health, spread out the wealth and bring heaven to earth? What is it worth to keep this light in our life? You're a muse, you're a poet, you're an inspiration, you're a heart-skipping stone, a beat that just keeps on going and going and going and going. You are a resonator. I will heal you with sound. I will heal you with sound. You are a resonator. I will heal you with sound. I will heal you with sound. You are a resonator. I will heal you with sound. I will heal you with sound. You are a resonator. I will heal you with sound. You're gonna get better. 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 We're making our plans, we're packing our bags, had a foot on the plane, had a face in the sand. Now you're under attack, and you're flat on your back. A relapse or what happened? Oh baby, I can get you something to eat, anything that you need. I'll be back in a flash. Before you could bat a lash, then maybe draw you a bath or a picture of someone I love.